we're in the middle of winter here in the northern hemisphere as we're recording this. You're in the southern hemisphere. What you're talking about is like in the winter, things are not available. I would also say that where you are in the middle of summer, if I turned you loose and said, eat all you want, don't go to grocery stores or restaurants, but just live off the land, you would probably in the middle of summer find almost nothing that you could eat. Like
Hmm.
it's striking.
Kangaroos, maybe.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's so
no,
interesting.
yeah, well, and that's the thing too. I mean, you say, well, there's fruit and plants want you to eat fruit. Well, plants don't necessarily want you to eat the fruit. They want something to eat the fruit. It's not necessarily you. Most plants, most fruiting plants, most fruit will still kill you. And because they're co-evolved with animals like birds generally that are designed to eat them, and quite often those seeds won't germinate unless they go through the guts of specific birds, like the cassowary bird here in Australia. They just eat tropical fruits and about 150 varieties of tropical fruit. And every single one of those fruits will kill you. And every single one of those fruits will kill almost every other animal on Earth, except the cassowary bird, because it won't germinate unless it goes through the gut of the cassowary bird. And so it has to be very beneficial to a cassowary bird and very toxic and harmful to anything else, or else those plants die out. If those cassowary birds even leave the area, those plants die out. So you can walk around, you can be in the tropics and think, I mean, because I'm in a more arid area of Australia, it's like, yeah, you're not finding too much forage around here. Little bits of things, but I mean, you're not going to get an adequate amount of nutrition, just living off like little, twigs and leaves and things like that. Like you're going to have to make a kill, and you're going to have to get an animal. Even in the more tropical regions of Australia, unless you come across like an orchard, there's not that many of edible plants and edible fruit out there. Certainly in comparison to the rest of the fruits out there. So if you're just finding random pieces of fruit, you would be very foolish to eat them because most of them will make you very sick or even kill you. So it's it's a lot more stark than people realize. All you have to do is watch those shows like Naked and Afraid, and what was that one? It's like Alone or something like that. We're just out in the middle of nowhere, and the people that survive, they always talk about, I have to get the fattiest food, I have to get the fattiest meat. This is so important. And animals are breaking in, they're trying to get the fat, and they get their stores taken away, and they're in trouble, and they don't survive. And then even the ones that are able to get a lot of fatty meat and all these sorts of things, I mean, they're just losing tons of weight because it's so difficult for them to get enough food and enough nutrition out there. And these are survivalists. These are people that do this stuff, all the time. And but it's rough. It's a rough survival. And there's never been a vegan winning that. There's no plant-based people that can even compete on that. It's not possible. And they're living in the middle of the woods. Plenty of plants. I mean, go for it. It's not going to happen. They're not able to. You can't survive on that. So we live in a very, very coddled existence where where the most of the rest of the world does not live in these conditions that we have. We have the luxury of pretending that we're herbivores. We have the luxury of pretending that we're vegans and things like that, and or going vegan because we do have an abundance, and we do have vitamin shops and things like that where you can get all the supplements of all the things that you're missing. That's not the case in Central Africa. That's not the case in most of India. That's not the case in most of the world that is well below the poverty line. And so it is a privilege to be able to enact this fantasy that we can survive on plants, and we should try to survive on plants.
Yeah. One of my favorite episodes I've ever heard of yours that you did was on Dr. Paul Saladino's show, where the two of
Mhm.
you kind of did a bit of a debate. Not so much of a debate. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that it was very respectful
More of
and
a
you guys had a
discussion.
good
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I really liked it. And he made the point that a strict carnivore diet for him gave him all these issues. We hear about electrolyte issues he was complaining about, and he was trying to justify eating not only fruit, but fruit juice. And in particular, I
Hmm.
remember this always stood out to me, like watermelon, like something magical about watermelon
Hmm.
juice, which I thought
Hmm.
watermelon was like 99% water anyway. So
Hmm.
is there any justification in your mind for including things like lots of fruit juices, honey, that type of thing?
Well, I don't think you need it anyway. And I mean, I'm living proof of that. So are you, and so are the Inuit, and so on. I mean, mainstream sources such as the Institutes of Medicine and the National Academies of Science have put out uh, public public statements saying that the amount of total carbohydrates that you need in your diet throughout the entirety of your life is zero, as long as you're getting a sufficient amount of proteins and fats, and that there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You do not need to ingest any carbohydrates whatsoever. You make everything that you need, and more than that, there are entire civilizations that have gone their entire life either with huge gaps in carbohydrate consumption or never eating carbohydrates in their entire existence. So we know you don't need them. And for example, the idea that if you don't get enough carbohydrates, your thyroid, won't function properly. But the studies on this that look long term, and some of the studies that get brought up are more short term, and they're in 18 diseased, overweight, diabetic men, and there's like some little transient drop, and it only goes for a month, and it's like, okay, so it's not generalizable, it's not to the general public, and it's very short term, it's only 1 month. What happens later, right? Well, when you look at long-term studies going on 2 years or longer, they actually show absolutely no changes or detrimental changes or drops in the thyroid, no elevation of cortisol, etc. The idea that this is a stress state is simply untrue. It's not factual. Um, in fact, we treat hypercortisolism like Cushing's disease with ketogenic diets in mainstream medicine right now. That is in the literature, and people can look that up, that is already used if somebody has a hypercortisol state like Cushing's disease. You put them on ketogenic diets. That actually helps ameliorate the damage from high cortisol. So if ketogenic diets caused high cortisol, then obviously that would exacerbate that situation and make it a lot worse. And that would be a terrible idea to put your patient on a ketogenic diet if they had Cushing's. But that is exactly what they do. And that's exactly what we do in mainstream medicine. And you do that before treatment, during treatment, and then even after definitive treatment, like surgery to remove a tumor, like a pituitary tumor in Cushing's. So that that doesn't even pass the smell test, right? So you can eat it if you want to. Um, There are people that do. But well, I know that there's nothing that you're missing that you would get from fruit. I mean, I think the main reason that Dr. Saladino um, likes to do carbohydrates was specifically for that he thought that long-term ketosis could cause problems, could cause hormonal problems, thyroid issues, possibly other hormone issues, elevated SHBG. But it's first of all SHBG. We just know so little about what affects that. And my SHBG was fairly low when I first got my bloods tested, sort of 2 years after I went carnivore. They've been exactly the same every time I've tested it. I mean, it
What
just
is, I've
hasn't
never heard of it.
changed.
What is it?
SHBG is steroid hormone binding globulin, and this binds to multiple hormones, not just testosterone, and it keeps it sort of in a storage form, in an inactive form, and then what's left over is your free hormones, like your free testosterone. So when you check your testosterone levels, you would want to test your testosterone, your SHBG, as well as your free testosterone or estimated free testosterone. They have to look at other sorts of albumin is another thing that can bind these things. So there's different binding globulins, and they would estimate, okay, how much of this testosterone is bound up according to these binding globulins, how much is free and left over. So that's the active form is the free form. And so you can have very high total testosterone, but if the free testosterone is lower, then that's less of an effect. But I simply just don't see that, and I've never seen studies in literature showing that. Again, the 2 year plus studies on ketogenic diets, they don't show any sort of hormonal disruption, and they don't show any sort of problems. And I've never seen that in my patients. I mean, I just saw a patient just the other day, um, and he's a big guy, and he works out a lot, and his SHBG is very low, like on the lowest end of the reference range. He's been carnivore for years. I've been carnivore for years. My SHBG hasn't changed a tick. So I just don't see these manifestations. When they say that your thyroid is going to get damaged, um, when? Because my thyroid again is exactly the same as it was 8 years ago. When I came onto this, or 8+ years ago.